A very good morning, dear students of class 10th English. Children, today we are going to do part 2 of the third chapter of our English reader book, that is First Flight. So, children, yesterday we did part 1, and the title of part 1 was His First Flight. So, the chapter was about a young seagull who really wanted to fly in the sky like his parents, brothers, and sisters, but he was unable to do that as he was caught too much in the grip of fear. So, gradually, with the untiring efforts of his mother, that young seagull was able to take his first flight in the sky. Means finally, he overcome his fear and flight high in the sky, right? So, children, similar to that one, like a flight word has been emphasized. So, of course, his first flight and this second part of the chapter, the black aeroplane. So, these have been taken in one main chapter by the editor of this book, right? So, the chapter is actually totally different from the part 1, right? So as you know, we did in the part 1 his first flight. The collaborative title is Two Stories About Flying, and yesterday we did his first flight. Remember, his first flight was about a young seagull who was afraid to fly high in the sky, and today we are going to do part 2 of that same story entitled Two Stories About Flying, and this is totally detached from his first flight. The story we are going to do today, Black Aeroplane, written by Frederick Forsyth, is totally different from the part 1, that is his first flight. There is no relation between these two stories. In fact, these have been clubbed in the same title, under the same title by the editor, but there is not even a single connection between these two stories. So that the previous part 1 means part 1 story contained the theme that how continuous efforts can make the fear go away, and the second story would tell us about something else, right? So I would let you know at the end, like how we can bind these two stories, like how we can find an intellectual connection between these two stories. So directly there is no relation, there is nothing common in the theme. I am repeating, directly there is no relation, nothing common in the theme of these two stories. In fact, like they are told from different point of views. So let's read the story, you would come to know more about it. The Black Aeroplane. So the moon was coming up in the east behind me, and the stars were shining in the clear sky above me. So these lines are told from the point of view of a pilot who was handling an aeroplane. So he was flying an aeroplane, and he saw that the moon was there in the east behind him, and the stars were shining in the sky above him. It means he was seeing the stars very clear. So there wasn't a cloud in the sky. He is telling that the atmosphere was clear. It was not at all cloudy. The sky was clear, and I was happy to be alone high up above the sleeping countryside. Countryside, children, countryside, the word is often used for rural areas, the areas where there is simplicity, where there is peace, right? So the pilot here says that he was happy to fly alone above the sleeping countryside. It means where there was silence, where there was peace, he was feeling happy to fly over that area, right? Next line is, I was flying my old Dakota aeroplane. So children, this is the name of the aeroplane. He was flying his old Dakota plane. And see from where to where he was going. Over France back to England. Back to England means he must have come from England. कि basically the pilot must be from England and he must have gone to France due to some reason, and now he is saying that he was going back from France to England. It means where he had gone for a few hours or a few days, you may say, France. So he was going back to his home, that his home is in England, right? So next line. I was dreaming of my holiday and looking forward to being with my family. I looked at my watch, 1:30 in the morning. You know, children, the people who stay away from their homes and do jobs, do service, right, for the sake of their family, for the sake of earning, right? So for those people, holidays from work, off from work, right, that means a great thing to them. So he is saying that I was dreaming of my holiday, means he must be working at the place France, and you know, he must be belonging to England. So here he says that like he was flying back from France to England and he was dreaming of his holiday. He was thinking about the time he would spend with his family in England. It must be he must be staying in France due to his service there, due to his job, his work there, and now he has a few holidays which he is dreaming of spending with his family, right? So when he checked the time at his watch, it was 1:30 in the morning. So I hope first paragraph is clear to all of you. Second paragraph. I should call Paris control room, I thought. As I looked down past the nose of the aeroplane, I saw the lights of a big city in front of me. I switched on the radio and said, Paris control Dakota DS088 here. Can you hear me? I am on my way to England. Over. Right? So children, I hope many of you must have heard the conversations of pilots and the people sitting in the control room. So the conversation is done like this. They convey a very brief message and after the completion of the message they say over, right? So that means my talk is done or the message from my side is done, right? So what he thinks here, he thinks that he should call the Paris control room, right? And he wanted to tell them that he is seeing the lights of a big city in front of him, right? So he switched on the radio. That was the means through which he could connect to the control room people there in Paris, and he told them that I am talking from this plane, I am talking to you, conveying to you from this plane number 088. Can you hear me? I am going back to my homeland, England, right? So see what voice comes back to him. The voice from the radio answered me immediately. DS088, I can hear you. You ought to turn 12 degrees west now. DS088, over. You know, this is how it works. Whenever a pilot feels that he or she is not able to find the way, or he or she is not able to see through like whatever way the person has to go, whatever way the person has to fly, they may take the help from the control room. They may ask their position, like exactly where they are at present and in which direction they are heading towards, right? So he asked from the control room and the control room people guided him to turn 12 degrees towards west, right? So next paragraph. I checked the map and compass, switched over to my second and last fuel tank and turned the Dakota 12 degrees towards west, England, right? So he checked the map and the compass. You know what's a compass? Children, compass is a magnetic or electronic device that is used to determine the cardinal direction. It's a device that is used to determine the cardinal direction, right? So he checked the map and the compass, and he several tanks may be there, fuel tanks. So he switched to his second and last fuel tank. He was left with only one fuel tank, and he turned his aeroplane 12 degrees towards west as he obeyed the guidance which was provided to him by the people of control room, right? What he is thinking. Next paragraph. I'll be in time for breakfast. It was 1:30 a.m., right? So that was a night time, and he is thinking of taking breakfast with his family. He is thinking that he would reach in time, right? He would reach in the morning and then he would have breakfast with his family. I thought. A good big English breakfast. Big English means obviously he wants to reach his homeland England, and he is thinking of an English breakfast because he may not be getting his favorite foods there in France. Everything was going well. It was an easy flight. I hope that's very much clear. Very easy language is used. He says that everything was going well means he was not facing any problem at all, and the flight was quite easy. He didn't face any problem. Next is, Paris was about 150 kilometers behind me when I saw the clouds, storm clouds. Remember, children, the beginning of the story when he says that in the third line, there was not a cloud in the sky. Third line, there was not a cloud in the sky. At this time, he is feeling stormy clouds. See what he says. We were reading this one paragraph. Paris was about 150 kilometers behind me when I saw the clouds, right? He had left Paris. He was about to reach England, and Paris was 150 kilometers away from his place. He had left behind the place, and that was 150 kilometers. He saw clouds, and clouds accompanied storm. They were huge. It means he saw big clouds. They looked like black mountains standing in front of me across the sky. This story can truly be imagined by a person who has actually taken a flight, by a person who has actually seen the control room, dealt with all those things related to flights. So here he says that those big black clouds seemed to me as they are black mountains, means I was a bit afraid to fly my aeroplane in the direction of those clouds, because I was afraid that they were seeming to me as mountains, means I may hit my plane and everything would be crashed and I would die, right? So he was a bit afraid. What he says, I knew I couldn't fly up and over them, and I didn't have enough fuel to fly around them to the north or south. As a brave pilot, he dared to say that he wanted to fly into those clouds, but he couldn't fly upwards because he was left with limited fuel. Right, as I told you, that was his last tank, and he would reach England the most, means he could not go any far behind, right? Any far. So he says that I didn't have enough fuel to fly around them to the north or south. I ought to go back to Paris, I thought. It means the clouds were so scary, the clouds were so frightening, right? He thought that ought to means he has to go back, because he was not seeing any way to reach England. He said that he ought to go back to Paris, but I wanted to get home. I wanted that breakfast. Means two tempting things were there. One was not only the breakfast. Breakfast symbolizes his quality time, spending quality time with his family. So he says that on the one hand, the breakfast, that family time was calling me, and on the other hand, I was risking my life by flying in such an atmosphere where there were stormy clouds, where I could have lost my way, right? So he says that he wanted to go to England to take breakfast, but as per the situation, he feels that he may not be able to comfortably reach England, so he should go back to Paris, right? So Finally, in the next line, he thinks that I'll take the risk. Take the risk means he would take the risk of going to England because a holiday is a big thing for working people, and they may take any risk to reach their homes. So see, he says, I thought and flew that old Dakota straight into the storm. It means towards England. The storm was there, stormy clouds were there, and he thought of taking that risk, and he flew his aeroplane, old Dakota, straight into the storm, right? He thought that I would see whatever happens to me, I will tackle that, but I really wanted to go home and meet my family. Next. Inside the clouds, everything was suddenly black. It was impossible to see anything outside the aeroplane. The old aeroplane jumped and twisted in the air. I looked at the compass and I couldn't believe my eyes. You know what he says? He says that inside those, when he entered those clouds, he couldn't see anything. Everything seemed black and he was not able to see. He has written it was impossible to see anything outside the aeroplane. Means how would he fly, because he was not able to see anything. The old aeroplane, his old aeroplane jumped, twisted means it went into this or that direction. It got jumbled. So he looked at the compass. Right, compass, I told you, compass is a magnetic or an electronic device that is used to determine the cardinal direction, right? He looked at the compass. He couldn't believe that the compass was turning round and round and round. It was dead. It means the compass was not showing him any way. The compass is used in a plane in order to, determine the direction, in order to see in which direction we are going. So he here says that the compass turned round and round and round, means the compass got failed and he was not able to see in which direction he is going, right? It was dead. It wouldn't work. The other instruments were suddenly dead too. I tried the radio. He tried to contact the Paris control room. Remember children, I told you that all the planes are connected with the control rooms where the people sitting over there guide the pilots in which direction they are supposed to go. He thinks of contacting those people. See, he says, Paris control, can you hear me? There was no answer. The radio was dead too. It means his connection with the control room was broken and nobody could hear him, right? I had no radio, no compass, and I could not see where I was. I was lost in the storm. Then in the black clouds quite near me, I saw another aeroplane, right? See the image. This is the pilot, and this is the plane which he saw, and there were no lights on its wings. No lights, right? And the pilot who is telling the story is looking at that aeroplane. See what he says. He says that he couldn't see where he was. He was lost in the storm. Then in the black clouds quite near to me, I saw another aeroplane. It had no lights on its wings, but I could see it flying next to me through the storm. And see the strange thing. The thing which was unbelievable means the aeroplane had no lights on its wings, still the pilot could see it. Means otherwise the blackness was there, blackness prevailed around him. He was not able to see anything but that aeroplane. Means he was able to see that aeroplane only, right? So that was next to him through the storm. He says that I could see the pilot's face turned towards me. He also saw that a pilot is driving that, flying that aeroplane, right? And he saw the pilot's face, right? Pilot was looking at the narrator, right? I was glad to see another person. He lifted one hand and waved. Lifted means he took up one of his hands and waved, like we say hello, hi to the people, like by waving our hands, right? So he saw that the pilot of the other plane was waving at him, right? So he became happy that somebody else is also there and his life may be saved, right? So follow me, he was saying follow me. the pilot of the second plane, the pilot of that black aeroplane asked the narrator to follow him. Right? Who is narrator? Narrator is the one who is sitting here, the one who is shown here. Narrator is the person who is telling us his story, who is telling us the incident that happened with him. Right? So, he turned his aeroplane slowly to the north in front of my Dakota so that it would be easier for me to follow him. I was very happy to go behind the strange aeroplane like an obedient child. Obedient means the one who obeys, the one who obeys, or you may say the one who does whatever is guided to him. So he says that it was actually not easy for him to reach his destination, but he turned his aeroplane slowly to the north and in front of his aeroplane so that he wanted to make it easier for him. So he was very happy that he is going to follow some aeroplane like an obedient child. Sometimes people lost their way whenever they are going to a destination. If they lose their way, if they don't know where to go, and they find a vehicle that has to reach the same destination, so they become happy that yes, this vehicle would show us the way. Like suppose somebody is going by their personal vehicle, right, and they lose their way, they don't know which way to go, right, and all of a sudden if they see a bus by the same name of the city, so they become happy that by following this bus we would surely reach our destination. Same is the case with pilot. He thinks that he would at least reach somewhere safely if he follows this plane, right? So next what he says, after half an hour, the strange black aeroplane was still there in front of me in the clouds. It means 30 minutes went by and the strange black aeroplane was guiding me continuously, right? So now there was only enough fuel in the old Dakota's last tank to fly for 5 or 10 minutes. It means his fuel tank was about to get empty, right? So he has to land anyways. Next he says, I was starting to feel frightened again. It means he was frightened when he was caught in the black clouds. The black clouds were seeming like black mountains to him, right? So when he saw that black aeroplane, he became relaxed that somebody is there to help him. But when he was left with a very little fuel that he could fly for 5 to 10 minutes, he became afraid once again. Right? He became full of fear once again. But then he started to go down and I followed through the storm. It means he was afraid that he doesn't know the way to go anywhere, and he was left with no fuel at all. So all of a sudden he sees that the black aeroplane which was guiding him, it started to go down, and our narrator followed that. Right? Next paragraph. Suddenly I came out of the clouds and saw 2 long straight lines of lights in front of me. Right? Suddenly he came out of those black clouds and he saw that 2 straight lines of lights were coming in front of him, and of course it was a runway and airport. I was safe. I turned to look for my friend in the black aeroplane, but the sky was empty. There was nothing there. The black aeroplane was gone. I couldn't see it anywhere, The aeroplane eliminated immediately after the narrator landed over, right? So here he says that he turned to look for that black aeroplane because of course a stranger pilot was flying that aeroplane, and our narrator really wanted to pay his thanks, to pay his sincere regards to the person who helped him throughout this stormy weather. So he wanted to thank him, but he couldn't find him anywhere. He notices that there was no plane behind him, or there was no plane in front of him. He could not see it anywhere, Next paragraph. I landed and was not sorry to walk away from the old Dakota near the control tower. I went and asked a woman in the control center where I was and who the other pilot was. I wanted to say thank you. You know, sorry, he landed and he felt it good that he should go he should go away from that old Dakota, his own plane, and he directly went to the control room. And the receptionist was there, the woman was there to attend him, and he asked that woman that where he was there in the black sky, black clouds, that where my plane was lost, and who was the other pilot who saved my life, who guided me throughout, because he wanted to say thank you to him, right? She looked at me very strangely and then laughed. Another aeroplane? Up there in this storm? No other aeroplanes were flying tonight. Yours was the only one I could see on the radar, right? So, children, strangely, very strangely, to the utter surprise of that narrator, the lady at the reception told a narrator that there was no other plane in the sky, there was nobody at all. Like, what are you talking of? Like, in a funny manner, in a little bit sarcastic manner, she says that no other aeroplanes were flying that night, right? So the narrator's was the only plane that she could see on the radar. Radar, you know, children, so it's a kind of method of detecting distant objects and determining their position. Means like radar, you know, a kind of device, a devising method that is used for detecting distant objects, that is used for seeing the objects that are very far and determining their position. So she says that she couldn't see any other aeroplane on the radar, like only one aeroplane was there, and that was Old Dakota. So, next paragraph. So who helped me to arrive there safely without a compass or a radio and without any more fuel in my tanks? Who was the pilot on the strange black aeroplane flying in the storm without lights? You know, the narrator is left very wonderstruck at the idea that there was no plane. He is wondering then who helped him. He was not having the compass in work. He was not having the radio in work. He was not even having much fuel in his tank, right? So there was no, if there was no pilot, if there was no other black aeroplane, then who was guiding him throughout, right? And how that black aeroplane was flying in the storm without lights? As I told you when I showed you the picture, that there were no lights on the wings of black aeroplane. So how could it fly in the sky? It strangely, you know, struck the mind of the narrator again and again. So a very open-ended story the writer has written, right? Forsyth has written an open-ended story. Means nothing is revealed at the end, that who guided him, where he gone after helping him, why the people sitting in the control room could not see that other aeroplane. Like what was happening at all? Nothing got clear at the end, right? So, see children, as I promised you in the beginning, like what is the similarity between the two parts of the story? Because I hope you must have been acquainted with the fact by now that the first story was about seagull, Samundri, right? It was about a seagull and his efforts to fly in the sky. And this is totally about human beings. It's about pilot, his curiosity, right? So how the two stories are related, try to understand it very clearly. So it's like nobody was there in the sky to help our narrator at that time of storm. In fact, it was his own self-confidence, it was his own conscious mind that was leading him towards his destination. The similar thing Means that seagull in the previous story was not helped by any of his parents, was not helped by his brothers and sisters to fly in the sky. In fact, that young seagull did it entirely by his own efforts. So this pilot was not helped by anyone at all, right? So whatever like he achieved, howsoever he reached his destination, it was all with the help of his own self-confidence and self-esteem. Means his conscience guided him to go to which direction to follow what, right? There was nothing in the sky to help him, right? So I hope the story is clear to all of you, and I really feel that you would found it as an interesting one. So do the back exercise questions for warm up, and the answer keys would be shared the very next day. So hope you have enjoyed the lesson. Have a nice day. Thank you.